This is the best of the week on Relevant Radio.
This morning, we're going to continue our weekly series on how to improve your marriage without your spouse knowing what you are doing. Joining us live from Bristol, Illinois, is licensed marriage and family therapist Doug Hinder to talk about keeping score in marriage and how to stop it. Doug's passion is working with couples to help them live the married life that God intended from the beginning. He's been married for 43 plus years to his incredible wife, Shirley. They have 9 children and 8 grandchildren. You can find Doug at happymarriageforlife.com. Good morning, Doug. Thanks so much for being with us here this morning. It is great to be with you once again.
Yeah, same here, John.
All right. Well, this morning we're going to talk about an interesting perspective. This tendency in marriages to keep score, as so many couples sometimes do, to keep a virtual balance sheet. Talk to us about this.
What we tend to keep track of is the negatives, right? The times you didn't do something or you did something bad. We don't keep track of the positives. But the problem is neither of us know what the other one is measuring and tracking. And so we end up getting in trouble and we don't even know it, right? You have these instances where your spouse is upset with you and you're scratching your head thinking, what the heck did I do wrong? I don't know what I did wrong. And now your spouse is really livid and you can't figure it out, right? Because we're keeping track of the debits. We're keeping track of the times you did something that I didn't like, or you failed to, follow through on a commitment. You didn't bring the milk home after work. You didn't take the garbage out, all these kinds of things. We tend to keep it. And if we feel it's in balance, we do okay. But if it's out of balance, all of a sudden now I feel I got a couple of gotchas coming. So it's out of balance. You've hurt me more than I've hurt you. So now I can jab you a few times, maybe a little sarcasm, maybe some criticism, just to even the score. So
taking out the garbage, is that worth more than doing the dishes?
It could be, but you don't know that. Your wife does, but you don't. See, that's the problem because nobody shares their score sheet.
Well, we have different value systems too. So what I may rate as, this is more important than that, you might rate it differently. So yeah, John, it could be. It depends on if someone hates doing the dishes or hates doing the garbage.
Yeah. Exactly right. And when we were first married, we agreed I would take the garbage out. That's pretty simple. But we'd get in fights about that because we disagreed on when the garbage can was full. Because I said, well, I'll just step on it. Now we get another day out of it. And she's like, no, it smells bad. Take it out. So even when we thought we knew what the score sheet was, we had a different interpretation.
Doug, what are some other obvious examples of couples keeping score that you have noticed in your work?
You name it, John. It's all over the board. It's like, making the bed, or it can even be things like you didn't say good morning to me, or you didn't say it in the right way, or you didn't kiss me before we went to bed last night, or there's just any
walking the dog.
Yeah, walking the dog.
Hey, it's my turn. No, you walked it last night. No, it's my turn. Yeah.
Exactly. So any and all behavior, you just don't know what your spouse keeps track of. And it comes from this place of, we've got a negative bias as human beings. So we're always on the lookout for danger. Well, it kept us alive, back in the saber-toothed tiger days, right? If you took your wife for a walk and the saber-toothed tiger jumped out from the weeds, well, that could end bad. So we're always looking for danger. Well, we don't have a lot of physical danger in our world anymore, but we're looking for emotional danger now. I'm always looking for times you're going to hurt my heart. You're not going to be there to nurture me and to love me the way I want to be loved. And so I'm kind of constantly looking for that. And, John, life being what it is, we tend to find what we're looking for. And if I'm looking for the times you're messing up, I'll find it.
Doug, why is it easier for us, kind of just sort of human nature, to notice our spouse's defects other than their virtues?
Yeah, and I think, it goes to this negativity bias, number one. But number two, I think the real reason, John, is this is the devil's number one ploy to try to destroy marriages. If he can get us to focus on our spouse's defects rather than our spouse's virtues, that drives us crazy because all of a sudden the defects start adding up because, none of us married a perfect woman. And so if he could get us to focus on the defects, man, he can stir the pot. And then now I owe you. You didn't take the garbage out and you didn't put the lid back, the cap back on the toothpaste. That's 2. I got you now. And now I can be mean to you because I got to even this out. And if he can get us to focus on the defects, man, he can bring a lot of havoc into a marriage.
Now, I know that John Gottman, who you have studied a lot of, he has a perspective on this whole idea of focusing on the negatives as opposed to the positives.
Yeah, he calls it a negative sentiment override, where as things continue to kind of devolve in a marriage and we focus increasingly on the negatives, that we just have an overall attitude now that you're a negative view of you as a person, and of us as a married couple. So the problem with the NS with the negative sentiment override is then that we tend to develop a scotoma, which Greek for blind spot, and then I don't see your virtues at all. And all of a sudden, man, when couples come in to see me the first time, they're doing a lot of finger pointing where they're just talking about all the things that the other person is doing wrong because they're in this really negative place. The devil is rubbing his hands together because now I got you because all you're doing is fighting about the defects and I'm not seeing the virtues. And then this is a downward spiral that destroys a lot of marriages.
So the big question here this morning is, what do we do to stop keeping a score, to end this cycle of she did it, I did it, and you're trying to balance who's keeping the score.
I think two things, John. I think, listen, I want to be the perfect husband. And if I'm doing something that upsets my wife, I sure would like to know about it so I can stop doing it. And the problem is a lot of times I don't know. And so if you can tell your spouse gently what they're doing that irritates you, that could go a long way for them starting to make some changes in their behavior. I think the other thing is learn to love your spouse's defects. Your spouse's defects are actually gifts from God to help you grow in virtue, because virtue only grows when it's tested. Our spouse's defects often test our virtues and give us a great opportunity to grow in virtue. So they're really great gifts. And when my wife and I were young, we had young kids, we met an older couple and they kind of became mentors to us, and they had a bunch of kids. And, the husband died, I don't know, maybe 12 or 14 years ago. And the wife died probably 4 years ago. And we were at her wake talking to one of the daughters, and they were telling us about mom's last day on earth. And it was this beautiful thing, John, where, they knew it was mom's last day. All the kids are there. The grandkids are there. They're in the bedroom coming and going. They're saying rosaries. They're telling stories. They're laughing. They're crying. Just this beautiful, beautiful kind of Catholic moment. And at one point, one of the daughters said to mom, "Hey, are you looking forward to seeing dad when you get to heaven?" And she didn't answer the question. And the daughter said, "Mom, don't you think dad's in heaven?" And she's like, No. I'm sure your father's in heaven. But, on earth, your father had a lot of defects. But I really came to love his defects as much as I loved his virtues. But in heaven, he's going to be perfect. He's not going to have those defects. And I think I might miss him. I'm like, whoa, that's it, right? This ability to fall in love with our spouse's defects as much as their virtues, and use those defects to grow in patience and humility and kindness and generosity. So our spouse's defects are really great spiritual, food for us to become more Christ-like. And so if we can get excited about those defects, that's taking a negative and putting a positive spin to it.
Doug, what kind of reaction do you get from the couples that you work with as a marriage and family therapist when you tell them that they should love each other's defects?
Yeah, well, some of them scratch their head and think that they should probably find another therapist. But most of them are like, wow, that's pretty interesting. And yeah, that makes sense. And I'll try to do it. But it's not easy, right? This is the hard work of our faith. This is the hard work of carrying our cross joyfully. Listen, marriage is our pathway for most of us, John, for you, for me, for Sarah. This is our pathway to heaven. This is how we're going to grow in virtue and grow in holiness. This is our vocation. And so, listen, there's suffering in life. There's going to be suffering in marriage. A lot of times we get this notion that, well, we're supposed to live happily ever after. And I get it. My job there's going to be suffering there, and the idiots on the highway and yada, yada, yada. And I'm going to catch a cold. And there's physical suffering. But somehow I shouldn't have to suffer in my marriage. Nothing is further from the truth.
Yeah, you remind me of the one lesson that I will never forget from our marriage prep now going on 19 years for Cindy and I. My job is to get Cindy to heaven. Her job is to get me to heaven. And I get with that eternal perspective, then you can deal with the defects.
Yeah, my wife has a saying, It never says she. He who irritates sanctifies. And I said, well, I'm doing my job then. I am making you holy.
The idea of marriage being a 50-50 relationship is really not totally true, because marriages really are never going to be balanced.
No, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. So get over that idea that somehow it's going to be fair, because it'll never be fair through my eyes, because I'm focused more on your defects and I'm focused more on my virtue, right? So it's just get over that idea of keeping score and having the thing balanced. Love unconditionally, right? This is the agape love, right, of which Jesus is our role model, right? This unconditional love. Unconditional love doesn't keep score, because my love is not conditioned on whether you're nice to me, whether you take the garbage out, etc. My love's unconditional. And so I don't need to keep score. I just need to love you. And when there's conflicts, I need to try to resolve those and get those fixed. But my love is not conditioned on whether or not you take the garbage out. It's just a losing proposition, and it will produce disharmony in your heart. It will leave you uneasy. It will leave you bitter. It will leave you angry. And that's not a good way to go through marriage. So love unconditionally. Don't keep score. Let God keep score. He's the one who's going to sort it all out in the end anyway. You just focus on loving your spouse the best of your ability. And when there's conflicts and there's issues and your spouse does things that hurt you, talk about it in a gentle way that still maintains, it's the idea of complain without blame. You've done something's happened that's hurt me. You came home late, you didn't call. I'd like to ask you to just call from now on. Okay, good. I'm not blaming you as being a bad person. Complain without blame is a good way to get out of the keeping score kind of trap.
I love that. Complain without blame. That is a great takeaway. And also, just a reminder, don't forget to say to your spouse, I love you, honey.
Yeah, well, exactly right. And the way to crowd out the negative is by crowding it out with the positive. And so I have my couples a lot of times just make lists of all the things they admire, they appreciate about their spouse, and then share that. And the more I can talk about all the things that are good in you, that are virtuous in you, that I love about you, that I appreciate about you, that I'm thankful for about you, the less time I got in my brain to think about all the things that irritate me. And so spending time every day in gratitude with each other is a good way to overcome kind of this negative sentiment override.
As always, very practical and wise advice. Really appreciate it. Doug, thanks so much for being with us.
Great to see you, John, and I'll see you next week.
Looking forward to it. For much more, you can go to happymarriageforlife.com. Like what you just heard? Share it with your family and friends. And thanks for listening.